Our homework for last week was Musica Divina, using music to help us bring our focus toward God, and even in some ways to accentuate the experience of our prayers. Like Augustine said, he who sings his prayers prays twice. So, as usual, I would love to hear how that went for you. If you had any cool experiences or struggles or whatever, let's talk about them.
I loved it.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to hear the music for a long time, and I couldn't turn on the music because then if I heard sad music, I'd start crying. So I decided to go on the internet and get the music that's not so uplifting, but smooth at the same time. So I kind of studied it, and I figured if the piano would be a good, it's kind of ding, uplifting on top of the music itself, piano. And so I played that, and then I started painting.
Oh, interesting.
Said, Lord, I'm going to pray to you when I paint. Every little thing I do, I'm going to say my prayers for everyone and everything.
Yeah.
So then I kind of ranked it down to a list of different people, like the people in my building, the people in church first, my friends, my family, and I figured for every painting I'm going to paint for each part of people, like the church, my family, my friends. And I just said, wow, thank you, God, because the Lord really kind of brought me through you to do this.
Yeah.
So it's helping me to paint again. Those other paintings I put up were old.
Really?
Yes, they weren't new.
Huh.
So I've had a hard time trying to paint again. So I started the painting again through the Lord, through you, and through me for my prayers.
Yeah. Well, that's so fascinating. I'm glad that you brought that up, because what you're doing there is you are layering different methods of prayer on top of each other. Yeah, that's yours.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I do say the Alma first.
Yeah, that's great, which is always a great preparatory prayer. But, you've got the musical prayer going on, but then, painting itself can be a form of prayer. And also, it's a skill and a talent that not all of us have. And so, you're taking your talents and your skills and using them as a method of prayer. And that's what all of us ought to be doing. So I think that's wonderful. And also that sort of layering is something...
Through Christ, through you, through me.
That's right. And through the music, because all forms of art have a way of doing that. When we bring art into our prayer life, it's engaging like a different part of our brain than just the rational. When we limit ourselves to just words, we're engaging another side of the brain. But when we bring in art, it enables us to think more symbolically and more emotionally, and make all these different connections that might not have been there before. And then especially when you start layering different forms of art like that, so with music, you've got not just got the music, but you can also add in there, poetry is sometimes involved in music as well. And then when you add the visual level of, visual art, it all just sort of piles up, and you begin creating these sort of woven nets of meaning that just sort of goes all throughout it. That's one of the beauties, I think, of praying in the context of a liturgy like ours, is that what the liturgy is, it's a variety of art forms that are all woven together to make this one complete piece right before us. And you get to be like one of the threads. You get to enter into it as one of those pieces and get woven throughout the whole thing. And it's this whole unit of action, bringing together visual art and architecture and music and poetry and prose and just all of it. It's really a remarkable thing to experience. And I think that that's also the beauty of Musica Divina. Most of everything else that we've talked about, I've tried to isolate, right? Like, just do this, don't layer things. But I think Musica Divina is one is so naturally layered. You can layer it with other forms of prayer so easily. And not only is that valuable, but it accentuates those other forms of prayer as well while you do it. Go ahead, did you want to follow up?
Yeah, I do. You said music in Divina?
Musica Divina, it's
Oh,
a form of prayer.
referring to the music. Okay, yes, all right. I thought it was a special kind of music.
Mm-mm.
Okay.
No.
I think it's interesting. Music is such a multi-layered thing, right? So you can listen to and contemplate music. There's a thing called the Psalm Project, which is all the songs put to music.
Mm-hmm.
So listening to that this week was kind of had me thinking a little bit about David and his love of music too, and how that was kind of something I think. I don't know. Think about the heart of music and the way it reflects God's heart, and that there is music endlessly in heaven. You know, I think that is something that is a reality that I just sort of reflected on differently this week.
Yeah.
But also, I felt like, so I listened to music, you know, it's sort of practicing the presence in some ways, right? Like
It is.
you're doing the dishes, you know.
Yep.
But then other times you could kind of focus in on music as its own thing. But I found listening to music too in nature was something, or even singing in nature.
Yep.
You know, I took a few hikes this week because it was so beautiful, and being outside, like certain hymns would just come to mind, or songs. Yeah, I just feel like it was a neat thing to see the crossover of those as well.
Yep. I like what you bring up about nature. You mentioned music in heaven. There's also music on earth. So here you have this intersection with all sorts of interesting philosophical things. So you've got Pythagoras, who came up with the theory that cosmos is music. And he took his study of math and made musical connections, taking a string and cutting it in half. It creates an octave, and then as you sparse that out, you create the scale, and so on and so forth. And that's just fascinating how math and music and cosmos are all connected together. And then you have that same sort of tradition that manifests itself in a lot of literature. So obviously, most people are probably most familiar with C.S. Lewis. Aslan creates the world by singing, with song. And of course, C.S. Lewis was very familiar with, Pythagoras and whatnot. But also, you have that as well. I think C.S. Lewis was aimed towards, as a kid's book, but Tolkien did the same thing in the Silmarillion. That's how the Silmarillion starts, is with song, and the cosmos being formed out of song. And I think Tolkien does it better. In the Discord, yep, that Morgoth brings in, yep. But I think there's something really beautiful about that. And as we participate in that, we become a part of that song. Your life is a song, is sort of a melody, a theme in that whole thing, in the whole symphony of the cosmos. And then, there's even more to it. Just that whole concept of a symphony, of all of these notes sort of working together and being layered on top of each other, and how God can take the whole thing and all these individual notes, but make it work together as one whole with an arc. And then he takes, the minor notes and the discordant notes, but then works off of it and brings in. It's an image that really works. It's great.
Yeah, I was listening to Gregorian chants,
Mm.
and I think one of the things that struck me was the fact that they were in Latin language I couldn't understand, but at the same time these are things that have been sung from the very beginning of Christianity, and the fact that music is going on constantly around the world
Yeah.
of those who are, so it's like you kind of step into that when you're listening to all those kinds of stuff. It allows you to connect to all the things that are going on simultaneously, not only here, but as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever.
That's right.
You've got the same continuity in time and in space.
Yeah, boy, is that an interesting point. How the way in which music is able to connect us, and it doesn't just connect us with other people in the experience of it, like in a choir. If you've ever been a choir, you develop like a special, or a band, you develop a special relationship with the other members in it as you sort of bond around the music. But it's fascinating because then music also becomes a tradition, and cultures are in many ways sort of inhabited by their music. Their music becomes so expressive of their culture, you almost can't separate a culture from its music. And as a culture evolves, its music evolves. It's interesting to see how much American culture has evolved over the past 100 years and how much our music has evolved. Every time there's a new cultural movement, there's a new musical movement. But then also to connect that, as you said, with the church. The word culture, at the root of that word culture is cult, which is a system of worship. And so the church does and has and should, I think, have its own culture. And that culture does, and should be expressed in its own specific forms of art and music and so on and so forth. And by connecting ourselves to those musical and artistic modes of the past, it's a way in which we can participate in that sort of communion of the saints anachronically throughout time. So transchronically throughout time.
I'm weaving this into the healing prayer conference that the diocese had up in Amesbury, and I got to see my old friends from Amesbury, Albert, play different instruments. His dad played the Steely band.
Oh, really?
And he plays in this. He said that what the world calls improvising, the church is playing in the spirit. You're playing.
Yes.
In tongues.
Yeah.
And then you're doing that with others, and so you're weaving and interpreting.
Yep. A lot of people don't realize this about Gregorian chant. Gregorian chant was not written as a static form of music, but as an elastic form of music. It was written with the intention that the performers would ad lib off of it. So what's actually written for the Gregorian chant originally was just a guide. And they were intended to sort of add flourishes and keep that, keep the core as the core, but add flourishes all the way around it. And not, we've sort of turned Gregorian chant into something that it's not, because it's supposed to be much more. It's actually remarkable how like jazz it can be, because if you think about it, it's non-metered, it's modal. And it's intended to be improv'd off of, which is really cool, and people don't really. And so there, in traditional and ancient Gregorian chant, there really was sort of this sort of freedom of the spirit, in a sense, that would have gone along with it.
I was trying to remember his name, but John Coltrane.
Yeah.
I Love Supreme was an album he wrote, like inspired by the gospel.
Really?
As what I'm trying to remember the throughout the entire album. In every song, it's the Love Supreme. Like it's like I wish I could iterate it better because I wish I could say it better. But it's like this this set of notes or a rhythm that is existing throughout the album. But it's Coltrane's way of expressing this one thing that was throughout and in everything.
Wow.
And it's a beautiful concept, and I love the way it plays out in his kind of jazz
Yeah.
world.
That's cool. I love Coltrane. I'm going to have to check that out.
I want to add a thread that we've had in the past weeks where we said that the Jewish Passover was a liturgy that was a drama that you are to participate in. And every Easter I play Don Francisco's He Is Alive.
Yeah.
That's my liturgy, and I did that with my kids, and they play the video clips from the gospel. Can't remember, which one, but great footage.
Yeah.
And so you're just, and Don Francisco is such a master at pulling you in, using music to make you part of the drama.
Yeah.
So you feel with Peter when he says, even if he was alive, it wouldn't be the same because I betrayed him. And then the room is filled with suddenly, the room is filled with a sweet perfume.
Yep.
And his eyes are filled with love, and I just fall at his feet.
Yep.
And he's alive and I'm forgiven. Heaven's gates are open wide.
When I was growing up, one of the cities over, Wheeling, West Virginia, always had an Easter play of that specifically. Every year we'd go to it every once in a while. It was very arousing. But no, it's true, and I think that's another one of the values of mixing music with your prayers and with your meditation, is that it really does sort of have a way of leading your emotions, and tethering your emotions to the music. And I don't know, if you're in a bad mood, listening to music is a good way to kind of turn that around, and that's really can be helpful.
I find that I have a hard time sometimes over-intellectualizing my prayers, and getting really in my own head about things.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes when I pray with music that I feel like I'm sort of integrating emotions into my whole prayer process.
Yes. Yeah, and you are. That's what engaging that other side of the brain does. And it enables those two different sides of the brain to communicate back and forth better. And so you end up going in places that you wouldn't have gone without the music.
Exactly.
So,
Because I'm a visionary, and when I was painting and praying with the music,
yep,
I was visualizing my prayers.
yep,
Oh,
yep.
this is
Yeah,
great.
right. As exercise, I like to swim, and my daughter gave me a set of headphones that you can actually listen to, like MP3s when you're doing it.
In the pool.
And as you're swimming, yeah.
That's cool.
They basically talk to the vibrations through your head so you can hear it. And I put these MP3s on, which were, worship music. And it's like, once you start to swim, it's like you shut off your body, you shut off noise from the outside, everything else is shut off. And all you've got is the music going. And it became, I don't want to say it was better than the liturgy.
Yeah.
It was a very profound moment of worship.
Yeah.
Just to sort of shut everything else off.
There's another element to that, which is controlled breathing.
Right. Oh, interesting. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yep. And then also probably, oxygen saturation as well is going into that. But yeah, that's a really good point. Yeah, that's really cool. And I had no idea those types of headphones existed. That's awesome.
I didn't either until I got them for a present.
And
Yeah.
it's so much like sensory death.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
All the bubbles, it's just washing around, and you're completely disconnected from almost pretty much everything else except for the music.
You're kind of weightless too. You're kind of weightless too
Yeah.
in the water. That is cool. That's cool.
I'm thinking a lot about seeing and unseen realities, right? And the way that life is sacramentally allows us to like participate in the unseen realities.
Yeah.
And I just feel like music is such a beautiful bridge for that.
Hmm.
That's something that's been such like just something that's been like percolating in my mind a lot this week. Is like how much art and music, and I've been painting a little bit too, and how much those things, and nature, and just like I've also been walking on the beach a little bit, and those things just provide such a beautiful, it's like such a good gift that we're given to have that touch point that allows us to sometimes engage with and
Yeah.
experience the unseen reality in a way that is really real to us. I just think that's such a
Hmm.
amazing thing.
Yep. Yep. That interweaving of the physical and the spiritual.
I'm still
Yeah.
high on the conference and tying everything together. They were very much into the body, that is the corporate. They only do teaching, it's almost like just the fact that there are people behind, and a little bit of interplay, but you get pulled into that too. In the practicums we did triads, and so that you didn't talk too much, you could only say one word or phrase, and then go into a moment of silence where the spirit would take over,
Yeah.
and then something would percolate out of that from the other two. But you had to keep your eyes open so that you were aware of your partners, and everything was tied together.
Hmm.
It was mystical, and it was profoundly effective. And I don't even know I hardly know what I said, but someone said afterwards that the two people that I was with, they heard them talking and how profoundly they were moved by what I didn't even know.
Yeah. There's an interesting spiritual connection there. For instance, when you're singing in a choir, it's important to try to balance. So you don't want your voice to be going over everyone else's voice. There needs to be this blend, which requires you all musical performance with a group requires this sort of listening to others. Yeah. And being sort of aware of them and trying to gauge yourself in relation to others. And there's something that's really fundamental about that to Catholic theology and Catholic spirituality. That is essentially conciliar, the conciliar concept, that we're listening to God and others and sort of pulling back our own passions in order to express this union of the whole. And
Hear any one voice.
that's precisely it. In that we as individuals sort of get lost in the whole body, and I think that there's something really wonderful about that. And that happens in the liturgy as well. People sing with the most gusto when it's loudly sung, and they're not going to be heard over everyone else. And that's why I love the way Dan does things. He's got that organ, all the stops open, just blaring, and the choir is loud, and that gives you could just really, get into it. But I think that's an important aspect, and even in the liturgy itself, without the music, there's something important about doing the liturgy together. I had a parish some time ago, and there was someone who was just a fast talker. And anytime we would say something like the creed, they would get ahead of everybody else. Like they'd go, "I believe God the Father Almighty," and everyone else would go, "I believe in God the Father Almighty." And he'd go, "Maker of heaven and earth, maker of heaven and earth." And they were just sort of like leading the whole thing. And it's not supposed to be that way. Like it's supposed to be us pulling ourselves back for the sake of everyone else. And there's really something very, very Christian, fundamentally Christian about that. It's pulling back our pride and becoming part of the whole.
That's why incredibly profound.
Yeah.
Because it was when they stopped listening to the rest and expressed themselves in a loud manner that it created clatter.
Yep.
But as you go out into the world, the problem is if you've got, I don't want to say God's music running in your head, the discordant notes become much louder as you go out.
Yeah.
And it can be very exhausting. It's like, can I retreat from this again?
You know, I think that's where the beauty of the church throughout time and space is. Because if you have this like idea in your mind of the notes of heaven and the notes of the saints and all the church that's come before you, the discord of the here and now becomes a little bit less impressive. You know, like there's this, I don't know, even I like to look at the lives of the lives of hymn writers throughout time. And they weren't all these impressive people, they were just faithfully doing a small thing in their time. And how deeply they've impacted me now in 2026, you know, like that idea of like, I get overwhelmed by the things that I hear in the here and now too sometimes, but I've been trying to kind of hold on to that. But across time and space, the voices of that chorus, of that choir are so harmoniously beautiful. You know, like they help me feel a little less overwhelmed.
The only problem I have is that there are people that I deeply love who have headphones on listening to Metallica or whatever the music of this world is, and they go, "This is great." And I'm like, yeah, your soul is getting starved to death, okay?
Right.
There are actually there's some really good Christian themes in Metallica, but I'll leave that aside. But
take your pick.
but no, I know what you mean, and I don't know. It's interesting that Saint Paul, you know, says to go around psalms, hymns, and spiritual songs. And I think you're right. That's sort of having that music of heaven with you as you go about your day is a great way to battle, you know, drown out the music of the world, in a sense.
Dan had us not sing along with the choir, but the program said, sing in your heart silently.
Oh, yeah.
With us, and so that you,
Yeah. That's another bit. There's a phrase in the Vatican II documents, Sacrosanctum Concilium, I think, on the liturgy. There's a Latin phrase there, which is participatio actuosa, which is active participation. And that doesn't just involve actually yourself saying the liturgy, but it's more of an inner understanding of what's happening in the liturgy so that you can participate spiritually. That spiritual participation is sometimes more important than just the external participation, than getting the words out. Because it's possible to get the words out and still not be participating internally. And
so when you guys pray on the stage, just as they were yesterday, we're all tied together.
Mhm.
Praying with you silently.
exactly, even when you're not moving your mouth, your soul can join in what's taking place. So when I'm not at the altar, when I'm in another church or whatever, and I'm in your place out in the pews, I often don't sing or talk or respond. I like to just get lost in the action of the liturgy and in the drama of it, and watch and observe, especially when you come to things like the offertory, because the offertory is so full of meaning, all the actions, and especially, you know, I do it, and like I know the silent prayers that you can't hear, and so on and so forth. And so, like, I often find myself just sort of putting the hymnal down while everyone else is singing and just getting lost in the action of the liturgy and in the drama of it. And that is participatio actuosa. That is that active participation. And even when, and I think that's important because not all of us are musical people. You know, we can't all be in a choir. Can't all, master a piano piece. But I think that there is a way that we can participate in it internally if we have the right intention. And I think that even sometimes our insistence to be physically involved prevents us from being spiritually involved. I remember one time at my last parish, it was during the Easter Vigil at the very end, when we were restoring the sacrament to the tabernacle. And there's sort of this part where you go to the Easter sepulchre and you sort of resurrect, you show that you have this sort of resurrection display. And there was a song going on at the same time. And I remember, I turned around and I picked up the sacrament and I lifted it up to show everybody, and everyone was doing this in their hymnals. And I stood there for a few seconds, just sort of like, everyone, look, and no one ever looked. They missed the whole entire action, which could have been really, really exciting and wonderful. Why? Because, and sometimes sometimes I really despise the bulletin, because it makes us think that our participation in the liturgy is primarily about reading and hearing, and it's not. It's more about becoming a part of the drama and a part of the action. So sometimes I just want people, like, put it away, don't read every word, listen, watch, become more deeply involved. And I think you'll have a much more fuller experience of the liturgy if you do it that way. Anyways, we're almost done, so I need to introduce the next form of prayer. Which is, most of what we've done in this class, the whole first semester was Benedictine, and that's sort of my bread and butter, especially as an Anglican, the prayer book's Benedictine, so on and so forth. And then we went into a lot of Carmelite spirituality after that. But probably the most popular form of spirituality, if you get a spiritual director, it's most likely that they've been trained in Jesuit spirituality. And so there are sort of different spiritual families. I am not a fan of Jesuit spirituality. It seems, first of all, it's sort of after our split with Rome, and so there hasn't been too much influence from that direction. But also it just seems really innovative to me. Like, Benedictine spirituality is really patristic, it's ancient. And Jesuit spirituality just sort of seems new and fanciful to me. So I've never really just connected with it. But I think it's important you guys get some connection with it. And so I would like to introduce you to the Jesuit Imagine, which is a way of reading the scriptures. And I think it's a good introduction as well to Jesuit spirituality, because it's very imaginative and very free, sort of. And it's different than Lectio Divina. So if you remember, it's called the Imagine, the Jesuit, just Imagine, yeah, basically. You'll get it in a second. So Lectio Divina involves those 4 steps: Lectio, Meditatio, Oratio, Contemplatio. You read, you meditate, you pray, you contemplate. Those 4. This is not what that is, so leave that behind. What it is, it's intended to be a slow, a very intentional, immersive experience with the scriptures. So you want to pick a whole story, like out of the gospel, for instance. Pick a story from beginning to end, read through it a couple of times, and then the idea is that you close your eyes and you imagine yourself as a character within it. You can be an external observer watching it take place, or you could put yourself in, say, Peter's shoes at the judgment of Christ, for instance, or one of the other disciples' shoes, or you could be, for instance, the girl that asks Peter, I'm pretty sure you know him, And what you want to do is you want to sit there and you want to add in details that aren't actually in the scriptures. I know, I make the same face, but try it out. It can be a really fruitful thing. So, but you're thinking, what is the warmth of the fire? What are little things? Because the scriptures don't give you like people's emotions or facial reactions. There's so much more that can sort of be filled in. And you sort of do that. And you just sort of see where that leads you, where it takes you. That's actually kind of where it takes you. So a lot of people like, for instance, The Chosen. That's really popular, and it is really well done. It's not my type of thing. I'd rather sit with an icon myself, but The Chosen is good. But what that does is it sort of fills in the blanks for people, and it makes it more personal for them. And I think that that's the same thing that a Jesuit Imagine does as a form of meditation on the scriptures. And I think it can be really fruitful. So even if it's not your thing, I want to challenge you, do it this week. Try it out. Pick a story from the scriptures, immerse yourself in it, imagine yourself as different characters, fill in all the gaps, think of all the facial expressions. Why did he say it? How did he say it? Did he do it this way or that way? Just sort of fill it in and let your imagination go. And see where God takes you. It may bring you to some realizations about the text that you can personalize that maybe you haven't done before. Okay? So that's your homework. We'll talk about it next week. Give it a try. Cool. Thanks, guys.